What's going on, guys? Welcome to another Remnant video. This time is going to be another challenge run that made me want to die, I'm gonna be honest with you guys. So my last one was the hunting rifle, and it wasn't all that difficult, so I decided to up the ante a little bit. The rules for this run are pretty simple. I can't use armor, I can't use trinkets, I can't use consumables, and mods are banned for the most part. I'll explain that a little more when we get into it. Also, I will be skipping most of the overworld, and the DLC is included, which is why this video is so long. But without further ado, let's get right into the video. After dying in one time due to a lack of damage, I just run back to the ward real fast and do the key puzzle and grab Elder Knowledge, as is always useful, and then we move on to the first boss, which will be Gorefist. Now, as per usual, Gorefist isn't that bad. As long as you are dodging at the appropriate times to avoid his charge attack, he's not a problem. I went for the shotgun for this boss this time, as the hunting rifle actually is not all that great at dealing DPS here. And it works like a charm for the most part. It does get me a few times, just because I roll at the wrong time, but after a few attempts and a few ammo boxes, because our damage is already showing how bad it is, the game at this point expects you to at least have armor, but we don't have that. So, everything one-shots us, we do no damage. I get super close there, but one poor roll kills me. But on the very next attempt, we tidy up our rolls a little bit, and we manage to take him down no problem. This run is already proving to be quite annoying. Now our next encounter is actually quite the unique one. It's the one with the two hearts that you have to kill. But first I run to the end and talk to the guy and grab the ring. I can't use it, but I like stuff. I like purple. I'm a loot whore. But after doing that, we go back and try and do the hearts. And this is where I realize that I'm already stuck. The hearts mechanic is that once you shoot them and aggro them, they spawn an infinite number of these seed collars. And I can't deal damage faster than they spawn. It's just not possible. It takes too long to kill them all, and they all almost one-shot me. There are a few strategies that I tried to go for here. One was just running in circles, trying to kite them indefinitely and using the shotgun. But I always kept running out of stamina or getting unlucky with spawns. The shotgun was doing great damage, but I just couldn't survive long enough. So this is going to be the first event where we are stuck, and it's already happened, our second encounter. This run is looking very juicy. Unfortunately, I do have to skip this for now, but I will be coming back to it. Moving on to the tunnels real fast, we make our way to the church. The tunnels are nothing new. It takes a bit to get through them, just because of how underpowered I am, but nothing too complicated. After a bit of spelunking, we make our way to the church. Now, the church is pretty scary in most runs, and especially challenge runs, but for some reason I got like really lucky, or I don't know, I don't even know what to say. Basically, this didn't take very long at all. I did it on my second try, actually. I did die that one time just because I got distracted, but the very next try I nailed it. I did everything right. Although near the end I kind of got a little panicky. It was so chaotic, there was enemies everywhere and I just could not deal the damage to keep them down. I just did my best to keep aggro of everything in the room and run in circles near the end. But other than that, this wound up being like one of the easier churches that I'd ever done. What? Do your thing! Oh! Okay, that wasn't too bad actually. With the church done, we managed to pick up the sniper rifle, and as a little spoiler, this thing becomes my main staple for the rest of the run. Next up on the chopping block for Earth is the Mangler. Mangler's not too unique of a boss, he just spawns a lot of adds. I decided to go with the shotgun again, because I'm always going to be really close range to this guy. I do make a couple mistakes here and there, but it's just a matter of trying to keep those adds in check And after a couple more attempts, and rolling him into his walls and stunning him, we managed to take him out no problem. Mangler's just more annoying than he is difficult. It's just a lot of, not micromanage, but a lot of these bosses are just ad clear, and that's part of the challenge, is that we just can't ad clear effectively at all. It eventually gets to a point where I just don't have the time to kill the ads, so I get them down as low as I can, and then I just leave one or two alive and then just go from there. But after a few tries, we take him down no problem. Mangler's not that bad. Our overworld encounter this time was the Wailing Wood. Typically I would try and grab the mask and talk to him for the extra armor efficiency, but we can't use armor, and we don't have the mask, so I just decided to brutally murder the talking tree. Fortunately, we didn't get Mudtooth this time. There's nothing else to say about that. I just prefer Mudtooth. Mudtooth is great. Everyone should love Mudtooth. But we put a couple bullets in the tree, and we move on. Now, this is insanely lucky. In my opinion, the hunting pistol is the best secondary in the game, if not one of the best. And the fact that we actually got this event is such a boon. Because otherwise we would have to use some other really bad weapon, like the SMG or something. Or the Defiler. But this event isn't too complicated to clear out. It's just really cool to take note of that we actually got it. Hunting pistol is just one of my favorite secondaries in the game. We quickly run to the end. I almost died of a trap there, because I'm an idiot. But we're all fine. It was an easy dungeon, easy clear. We unlock the door, pick up the hunting pistol, and move on to the next dungeon. Now, it's at this point that I tried to go back to the hearts. And they're still really difficult. My first attempt didn't go too well, but I know at this point I am strong enough to actually do them, as long as I do the ring around the rosy strat correctly. After a couple attempts, I managed to perfect the technique, and it also takes a little bit of luck to make sure that things don't spawn in front of me, but after a while, things actually do stop spawning, and as soon as you kill the heart, all of its summons immediately die, which is nice. So after a few circles of training zombies, we managed to make it through. I run through and kill the cult leader himself, just because I want the experience. And we go and finish off the second heart, which is more of circle strats. Now this should be familiar with you guys if you're familiar with training zombies. With that roadblock out of the way, we finally make it to the final boss of Earth, the Ent. Now the Ent isn't too complicated of a boss. He's very big and very slow, so that winds up being pretty good in making sure that this boss isn't too complicated. A lot of his attacks are basically map-wide slams, and he does summon quite a few ads, but nothing that is too hard to deal with. Since I have to be staying so far away from him this time, I choose to go with the sniper rifle. I do make a couple mistakes at rolling at poor times, and trying to get the timing down of the stomps, because it's just been a while since I've actually fought the Ent. I typically get the dragon more than the Ent. But after learning his stomp attacks, and dealing with his ads, it's not too bad of a fight. He's got a lot of health, and our lack of damage is showing now more than ever. It just takes forever. Like, every attempt that I have to do on this boss takes me like 5 minutes of just shooting. Not to mention the fact that I have to use ammo boxes and just... it's overall just a mess. I get so close here at one of these attempts, and then I get greedy and I die, which is just an attempt wasted, and it takes me so long to get back there. But we do eventually manage to tidy up our mistakes, and after a couple more tries and a little bit more shooting, we do manage to be a little careful, take it nice and slow, and take the Ent out. One of the big things that I'm gonna have to do about this run, that I had to learn about this run, I should say, is that patience is important here. I don't have the damage to brute force anything, so fights are just gonna take a long time and I have to accept. But with the Ent done, Earth is completed, we make our way through the labyrinth, get to Rhom, and move on to our first dungeon on Rhom. Now, dungeons on Rhom are quite obnoxious. they're full of just these ranged ads, and a lot of the times they'll be just shoved full of these more like mini elites, but it's all just a matter of being patient and shooting straight. It doesn't take too much effort to make it through these dungeons, although some of them are more troublesome than others. But with a little time and a little effort, we managed to make it through without too much hassle. At the end of our first dungeon is just the Akali armor. It's not useful, but for the sake of completing the event, I do get to the end of it and collect some of the armor, and not the armor, the iron. I basically don't pick up any armor this run, even though I kind of want to. But after that, our overworld event is the obelisk once again, and I actually managed to complete the puzzle on the first try. There's actually a set number of combinations it can be, so as long as you know one of the, as long as you know the 4 combinations, it's typically not that bad. It's, for me, the past couple of times, it's just been this one puzzle to the left, but, it's free experience, so no reason not to do it. After that little overworld event, we make our way to the next boss, who winds up being Maul. Now, Maul is not difficult. The hunting pistol is great at taking care of his ads, and the shotgun is really good here too. The most interesting thing that happened to this boss is getting jump scared several times, because for some reason I just kept getting scared whenever he would kill me from behind. Oh shoot, I heard him too. It's more funny than anything else. But Maul's not too hard of a boss. Keep his ads in check. Make sure you don't lose track of him himself, because he can very easily surprise you. And it's a clean fight. With Maul dead, we get both the control rod and the ability to move forward. So we will be dealing with that optional boss at a later date. Now this next encounter... oh boy. What do I even say? Scourge has managed to make himself my next least favorite boss. It used to be Harrow, it's no longer Harrow. The Scourge is miserable. Let's start off with all the things that's wrong with this boss. He's very, very tanky. All of his attacks one-shot me. His ads summon indefinitely, and they always chase you. And to top it all off, he's Regenerator. Any boss that has Regenerator is horrible for me to fight. I just cannot deal more damage than they're healing half the time. Especially since this boss likes to go invulnerable so often, so it's just a lot of health he's getting back for free. It just winds up being a miserable slog. It gets so bad to the point where I just have to... I have to leave. I can't do it. I don't have the damage to fight him right now. And for my own mental fortitude, I have to move on. We will be coming back to it though. Luckily, the next boss is not so hard. The Harrow, I used to think was really, really annoying. But one great boon about this is that the fact that since we don't deal any damage, we actually can't stagger the boss. And because we can't stagger the boss, he won't ever run. So all I have to do is kite him around this set of stairs right here, since his pathing is a little weird around it. And it's not difficult at all. We even do it on our first try, which I never complete the Harrow on my first try. But yeah, if you're ever having trouble, just do your best to pace out your damage, and Harrow is not a hard boss at all. You don't even have to deal with the second phase. With Harrow being such an easy fight, it's such a good mind cleanser too after the Scourge. I was on the Scourge for quite a long time, and it wound up being just a mental deficit. It just ruined me. But yeah, with the Harrow down, we're able to move on. Now with Harrow gone, the only fight left on Rhom that we can potentially do is the Undying King. And this fight was, oddly enough, another roadblock for me. Once again, damage is showing how bad it is, with no scaling whatsoever and relying completely on the base damage of most of my weapons. I just can't finish fights fast enough or deal, like, specific thresholds of damage. It gets real bad at some points as well, whenever I'm this close to one-shotting certain mobs that would just make my life so much easier, and it winds up just not being enough. There are just too many things to keep track of. It takes too long to kill all of his minions. And even when I do get to certain checkpoints, I just don't have the weaponry to not get overwhelmed. And even if I am able to last long enough to not get overwhelmed, the amount of health he heals from his phase 2 basically negates all the damage that I would potentially be able to do. So I'm making almost no progress right now. So this winds up being quite the difficult fight, where I have to kill enough adds fast enough to not only not die, but also make damage happen. He almost gets full health right here. And in order for me to break him, I don't even get him back to the normal threshold where I had him. He has more health after this phase than when I did damage to him, which is not a good sign. So unfortunately, I'm gonna have to do something that I was kinda hoping to avoid. As it currently stands, it's not possible to do anything else on Rhom. So I have to go to Corsus. If I go to Corsus, farm up some gear, and then go back to Rhom, I should be able to complete everything on Rhom. I just need a little bit more power. So off to Corsus we go. Most of everything on Corsus is possible. It won't be easy, but it's possible. There is one boss in particular that's gonna be a problem, but I'll get to that later. Once on Corsus, we quickly make our way through the overworld. I have a lot of experience on Corsus, so it doesn't give me too much trouble. It can be quite daunting with the amount of enemies that come your way, but we very quickly make our way to the Butcher's body. And the Butcher is an easy fight. He's not a very difficult fight at all. For some reason, I'm just cursed to always die at least one time to this boss. I don't know what it is, I don't know how it happens, but I always just make one tiny mistake when I'm near this boss. I guess I just underestimate him a little bit too much. I still think he's the easiest boss in the game, but I always die one time to him. Only once though. On our second try, we managed to clean it up. The Butcher's not a very hard boss, and I decided to go with the shotgun again because I got tired of using the sniper rifle. I was determined to use at least something unique. But unfortunately, after this point forward, it will be just pretty much pure sniper gameplay. I think I do try and use the Devastator a couple of times, but the sniper just winds up being more useful. But yeah, after a couple more dodge rolls and a couple more attacks, the Butcher goes down. An oddly long fight too. I've never had to fight any of these bosses for as long as I have had to this run, so it winds up being a really unique experience. But we quickly talk to the Yaesha Queen and move on to our next boss, the Thrall. Thrall is quite the interesting boss, because a lot of his attacks don't really have lethality. He's got his basic attack, which he tosses your way and teleports around, which makes him kind of annoying, and his biggest attack will kill you. Like, he can kill you, but he also summons a lot of adds, and a lot of his attacks are more to trap you in specific portions of the arena. Honestly, the most annoying part about this boss fight was the fact that he spawned in as Regenerator again. But honestly, my strategy for dealing with this is just to run in circles for the most part, and kill one of the adds chasing me, because he spawns two in single player. Just killing one of them will make your life easier because they don't respawn unless you kill both of them. So after doing that and running him around in circles for a bit, it takes quite a few bullets to put him down. He's fairly bulky for what he's supposed to be, but we're just careful, we take it slow like we are learning to have to do, and we managed to take him down. Now with the Thrall out of the way, we make our way to the Twin Bugs. And the Twin Bugs wind up being another roadblock. They're not a hard fight, but as it stands, I don't have the damage to break their damage phase, so every single time they do it, I wind up just dying. There is a way to beat it, but it's gonna take a long time before I'm able to. And it doesn't really matter what weapon I use at this point, it's just gonna have to be the sniper rifle. As I said, I try and use the Devastator, but it just winds up being too slow. So we try once again with the sniper rifle, but unfortunately, unless we just get super lucky, it's just not happening. I did the math, and I need 3,500 damage to break both of them. So I need to do 7,000 damage before they screech, which is possible. But with the Twin Bugs impossible at this current point in time, I either have to find a way to break them or defeat the Undying King. So we go back to the Undying King. Now I am significantly stronger at this point. His summons are still a problem, but at the very least I can actually deal a considerable amount of damage to him himself now. And I'm able to deal more damage than he heals, which is pretty crucial. But now that we're actually able to damage him appropriately, this winds up being much more manageable, less more of an impossible task. His ads are also easier to deal with overall just because I'm able to kill them faster, so moving the Corsus and then coming back was definitely the correct play. It still takes us a few attempts, but after I get the pattern down and I clean up some of my mistakes, it's not too bad. This fight does take us ages though, because he just starts doing that healing phase as part of his normal routine, so you just have to be very, very quick with it. But as I've been saying for a majority of this run, patience is key. As long as we're slow and steady with it, and we're doing more damage than he's healing, it's not a problem. After a bit of rampant rolling here or there and a couple close calls, we finally managed to take down all of his ads and finish off the Undying King, which is one roadblock out of the way. Ugh, I got stuck on this guy for a while, honestly, just because I wasn't able to do enough damage. With the Undying King out of the way, it actually really motivated me to go back and try and finish the rest of Rhom. So after this, I immediately run back to Scourge, and we tried that fight again, and I decided to use the Devastator, because I'm desperate to use something besides the sniper rifle, and the Devastator's actually pretty good here. And a couple things to my advantage for this fight actually is that I've gotten strong enough to not actually get one shot. I put enough points into my health that it wasn't just immediately killing me. I was able to survive one hit from his orbs, which is massive, because I get hit twice here, actually. As you can tell, I'm irradiated because I got hit by one orb already. But we get super, super close here, and we finally managed to make some good progress. It does take us a little bit longer. This fight is just atrociously long. But besides one more close call, we do manage to take him down. Now, I was so happy to kill this boss. It's actually kind of crazy. This boss took me so long. When I tell you that this boss alone took me 5 hours to beat, that's not a joke. It was just overwhelmingly annoying to kill this boss with him spawning in his regenerator. But we finally got strong enough to take him down, and we move on to the optional boss, the Ancient Construct. Now, the Ancient Construct also spawns in as Regenerator because I want to shoot something and die infuriated. But the Ancient Construct's not too hard of a boss. We do die a couple times, but after a couple of attempts and a few close calls, we do manage to take him down. There's nothing really to say about this boss. He can be kind of oppressive if you don't know what you're doing. I would highly recommend trying to drag him to one side of the map so he'll spawn his turrets on that side, and then killing one so that way you can only have to focus on one. And then just make sure you dodge his brutal melee attacks. And he's an easy cleanup. On to the final event of Rhom, which is the Citadel. Fuck. I don't like doing the Citadel, and unfortunately this winds up being another event that is currently not possible, which means that we have to leave Rhom twice in order to complete Rhom. Because now that I've killed the Undying King, I can go to Yaesha and get a couple more perks and perk points, such as swiftness and putting points into both endurance and World Walker. But as it stands, the Citadel is not possible. It has too many enemies that I can't kill fast enough. If I stop and actually play the event the way it's supposed to be played, it takes too long. And the damage over time is too much. So unfortunately, we do have to go to Yaesha first. Now, nothing on Yaesha is impossible. A lot of it's annoying, but nothing is impossible. So I jump into this with pretty decent expectations. Everything will one-shot us at this point. There's not even reason of trying to become any bulkier with any sort of resistances or anything. It will just kill us. So at this point, it's just do or die. But luckily for us, our first dungeon's not too bad. We do make it through with decent speed. Everything at this point is just annoying to kill. The game expects you to be fully kitted out with decent weapons. We do have decent weapons, but we have no scaling. It's entirely base damage and perk and trait points. So even though our weapons are decently leveled up, it still winds up being quite a mess. The overworld hasn't been too interesting, outside of a couple events. However, there's this one area right here where I got overwhelmed, but I managed to survive until this little stair goblin thing decided to just shoot me from inside terrain, because terrain is a suggestion, not a fact. But other than that, we make it to the end of this dungeon, which winds up being a bell puzzle. Once again, I don't know the answers to this puzzle off the top of my head, so I cheat and just look it up for the experience. I didn't do it here, but you can get the swiftness perk from any of the bell puzzles. You don't need to do it at the panflutist. However, I got both the panflutist and this one, so I wind up being able to do it anywhere I want, really. Moving on to our next overworld encounter, it winds up just being the Stuck Merchant. Not too important, something to take note of because we will be completing the event, but all I do is take the Mysterious Curio because I can't use anything she gives me. And we move on to the Siege of Yaesha. Now, this event is really good at being really easy or really hard, and there's no in between. You either complete it on your first or second try, or it takes you forever. Unfortunately for me, this took me forever. My first attempt was really close, but then after that I just kept getting shot by archers, I kept getting overwhelmed, some BS kept happening. But, I mean, it's just the siege, it is what it is. You gotta man up. As long as you're hitting your shots, it's not that bad, and after a few tries, we do in fact manage to complete the siege without too much hassle. Still, it's not very fun. I'm not the biggest fan of sieges in Remnant, just because they're always so tedious to play on single player. But we complete it and move on anyways. Now the next boss on the chopping block is Stormcaller. Now I didn't actually know how this boss worked all that well when I first started this, but over the course of the fight I've learned quite a few things. He summons those little orbs that follow you, he's got a basic attack, and he summons a lot of minions. Keeping the minions in check is important, but when you get to about a quarter of his health down, he starts summoning random lightning storms. Or at least I thought they were random. As it turns out, he summons 2 storms. One is completely random, one follows you. So as long as you're running in a circle and you're careful not to run into the random lightning storm, it's actually pretty easy to avoid all of those attacks. Now the boss himself is not that difficult once you figure out how his lightning storm works. As long as you're not randomly rolling, so that way he accidentally catches you and you actually know how those storms work, he's not too difficult of a boss. It takes us a few attempts for me to learn how that works, because at first I didn't know. But he's not too frustrating of a boss. He doesn't have too much health, his attacks aren't too frustrating, and his ad summons aren't that bad. So, after a few attempts, we take him down. No problem. Moving on, we finish up the Mysterious Curio quest. Ignore this footage of me having the helmet on. I picked it up to start the event, and I forgot to take it off. It doesn't matter too much. I feel really bad about it. But this isn't the main fight anyways. Like, the outcome of this fight doesn't change at all. So, we quickly just take him down to 50% health and he runs. I take the helmet off, realize my mistake, and punish myself accordingly. And then we move on to the Stuck Merchant area to finish off the Root Horror. This boss is insanely easy. It's not meant to be that challenging. He has a couple summons, a couple ranged attacks. None of it is very hard. His weak point is very easy to hit, and he doesn't have a whole lot of health. So after a couple headshots, he goes down no problem. And we move on to the Warden's Pulpit. Now, Singe and Seer, I used to think were quite annoying, but besides a few mistakes that I made, I've actually managed to find a pretty decent strategy of taking care of these guys. Now obviously you want to kill the bird that's following you first. If you don't do that, then they become much harder. And then you want to take them to this corner. Now I do die one time to him just peeking at the wrong time, but if you can get him in this corner, his AI seems to just not work right, and he'll even wind up shooting himself a couple of times, as you saw there. And it just makes this fight so much easier. From now on, I would just highly recommend taking him to this corner and just dealing with him here. This only took us a few tries. I forget how many exactly, I think once or twice. But after taking him down, we are able to move on. Once more, we finally make it to the Pan Flutist event that I was talking about. I pick up the Swiftness trait, so that way I can eventually go back to Rhom and finish that. And then we move on to the final boss of Yaesha, the Ravager. Now, I fought the Ravager a few times. I've had to fight him more in recent memory than I had normally done it before, because I usually just do his puzzle and move on. But I didn't realize just how obnoxious this boss was. The constant pressure he applies to you and the infinite amount of summons he spawns that always one-shot me because I'm not wearing armor is quite tedious. And for some reason it felt like whenever he was summoning his guys, he would always immediately jump behind a pillar to let them off. And once he lets them get to the ground, they become infinitely more difficult to deal with, and it's just so annoying. Now, obviously, this is all just one big skill issue. I knew what I had to do, but I just wasn't able to do it. And it took me so long to fight this boss. It shouldn't have been this difficult. But eventually we do get it down. We take it slow, we make sure we're hitting our shots, so that way the ads don't cause too many problems. And we slowly chip him down until he finally dies. This was the most trouble Ravager has ever given me, because I'm usually able to just damage check through him. He doesn't have enough health to be that tough of a boss. Like, his routine is annoying, but I only ever have to do it 3 or 4 times before he dies normally, but not this time. But like I said, we're careful, we're slow with it, and we eventually chip him down until he's finally dead. Yaesha is finally done. Now with Yaesha done, we take the keys from Ford, and we head back to Rhom, actually, to try and complete the Citadel. The Citadel is the last event on Rhom that I cannot currently complete. I'm hoping to fix that now, and with the Swiftest trait maxed out, and the movement speed it gives us, as well as the upgraded weapons to let us kill a few things, we are actually able to make it through this event. I do make a few mistakes by hitting the wrong button. I tried to ammo box there instead of actually using my Dragon Heart. But the very next attempt, we actually managed to make it all the way there, and we pick up the Wastelander's Flail. Can't use it, but the event was completed. This was a big relief for me, because I thought this might have been the end, but luckily it's not. Moving on to Dreamer, I have a few things to admit. Dreamer is actually not possible without mods. I tried all sorts of different things. His first phase is still no problem. It's the easiest phase in the game. He takes so much damage, and you're probably scaled no matter what you do. This phase is never that bad. It's Nightmare that all the troubles begins. Now, by this point, everyone knows how Nightmare works. You have to dodge his attacks until he sends you to that Shadow Realm, and then you pick up a bunch of skulls by killing things in that Shadow Realm, so that way you can come out of that realm and break his armor and do massive damage to him. This isn't possible with my current set of gear. It doesn't matter how many skulls I pick up, I am never able to deal enough damage to break Dreamer as it stands. I tried a couple times, each time trying for more and more skulls. As you can see here, I had 8, and that wasn't enough. My next attempt, I tried getting 15, that wasn't enough. And overall, it winds up just being not possible. It's not even close. As you can see, I'm only dealing 8,000 damage here, when you need way more than that. So, I have 2 options. I can try and get a little stronger, or I can give up. Now, the only way for me to get stronger at this point is to actually enter the adventure mode, which was something I wanted to try to avoid, but unfortunately the only way to get any stronger at this point was to go to another mode. So after dying a few more times to Dreamer, because I was stubborn, I did eventually just suck it up and head over to the adventure mode. This took me quite a long time, because what I required was hardened iron at this point, but it was just a hassle. Now, to keep in the spirit of things, I did follow all of my rules. I did have to put on some gear in order to get hardened iron to actually spawn, but I made sure not to kill anything. I ran through, avoided doing any damage at all, and if I had to die in order to go forward, I just let myself die. Now, after a while, I did manage to finally max out my gear, and with a level 20 sniper rifle, before going to Dreamer, I decided to go back to the twin bugs, and not only were they possible, they were easy. Like, I'm doing so much damage here. The maxed out sniper rifle's base damage is nuts. And as soon as we get to this second event where they just try and do their little damage phase, I just wipe the floor with them. Now, I actually do my best to make sure to kill one of them whenever I can, because once you kill one of them, they can no longer do their damage phase, and I didn't want to push my luck. So, after murdering them both, it winds up being actually pretty easy to do this boss fight, which is really good. Because that means there's only one thing left stopping us from winning this game, and that's Dreamer. And this goes back to where that rule I made comes into play. Now, I originally wanted to ban mods, but as it currently stands, even with the level 20 sniper rifle, it's still not possible. So unfortunately, I do have to break that rule a little bit. It's not a ban on mods. However, the rule was I can only use them whenever I can't win the game anyway else. As you can see, now that I have Hotshot equipped on him and the damage over time is just doing crazy damage, easily breaks his armor. And after doing this 3 or 4 times, we managed to do the boss. Now, I feel bad about having to use Hotshot here, but it's the only time I have to use a weapon mod in order to win a boss. It's literally not possible otherwise. I tried everything in my power. This was the best way I could see about doing it while still being kind of in the heart of the run. But don't worry, that's the only time we have to use a weapon. I don't know if that makes me feel better or worse. But with that, the base game is completed. Now there is still more that we have to do. Last time I avoided doing the DLC, just because it's a little tedious. But this time we're not skipping anything. I do plan on just skipping over the beginning part of this DLC, because it's nothing important, it's always the same. I quickly turn on the power, and find the fuse, and open the last portal and make my save to Rezium. This little area doesn't change at all, nor is it really all that complicated. The sniper rifle is really good here. It's just the space damage is nuts. And we very, very quickly just make it through the station. Now, on Rezium is very similar to Yaesha in a way, where all of its enemies are more annoying than difficult because most of them are ranged, but it's not that bad. We very quickly make our way through the overworld with a max level sniper rifle, nothing's too complicated, and we make it our way to our first event. Now, this event is something that I don't have very many memories of. It's another siege, which I'm apprehensive about having to do, but it's actually one I don't remember doing before. It's this arena where you have to survive in this ring of fire, and you have to kill all the enemies. That's pretty much the gist of it. This area is really annoying, and it took me a very long time to complete. Now, I don't know if it's just me, but the later it went, the harder it was to actually see some of the enemies I was supposed to shoot. Because the longer you go in, the more rings of fire that come up. And it eventually got to a point where I just couldn't see things. Like, if there was a small rat running through the flames towards me, I couldn't see them at all. And it was so annoying. On top of the fact that if I ever touched the flames, I was immediately set on fire, which would almost kill me every single time. On top of the fact that so many minions would just spawn on top of me, this event just got on my nerves. But luckily, with a bit of perseverance and a bit of strategy, we do manage to make it through. My general strategy was to leave the elites for last, because honestly, if you make that guy put up his shield, that's just what he does until you do something to him. He just does that the rest of the run. And the other elite just summons more rats, which, as long as I don't lose track of them, aren't a problem. But I do have to be careful because the entire arena just being covered in fire, and the rats' projectiles everything just does so much damage. And one mistake means a reset, and this event is actually very long and very annoying. But all I do is follow my general strategy of kill the small ones, leave the big ones for last. And after a few trials and a few attempts of trying the strategy, I managed to avoid setting myself on fire and complete the event. It was obnoxious, but managed to do it. It's you gotta do what you gotta do sometimes. Moving on to our next boss is the Jackal. He's just a boss version of the elites that you find in the overworld, and he's got a few attacks. Yeah, he's very easy. We kill him on our first try. His problem is that none of his attacks are unique. He has one area of effect ice attack that can be pretty scary, but like that's all he has, and it's not unique to him. There's a lot of enemies with ice attacks that if you just spot dodge or roll to the side, you can easily dodge them. And it just winds up being kind of a disappointing fight, just because there's nothing he can really do. He does summon ads every once in a while when he runs away and tosses stuff at you, but like, I've got the hunting pistol. The hunting pistol is just fantastic here. It just makes short work of all of his minions, and dodging his stuff is pretty easy. So the Jackal just winds up, unfortunately, just falling over. Not too rough of a boss. Which is good, because getting stuck so often, it's good to have a good boss every once in a while. But yeah, first try on the Jackal, everything's all fine and dandy. Next up for Rezium is the Warg and the Rider. Now these are a boss you have to fight every time, so I've got quite a bit of experience with them. And because of this, they wind up being quite the easy fight as well. They have quite a few attacks, honestly, and they can be quite tricky for people who haven't had experience with this boss, but all of their attacks are extremely slow. They're all lethal, so if you get hit by any of them, they all just kill you. But they're all just so slow that as long as you're careful, none of them can hit you. I typically just take out the Rider first because I feel like the Warg is easier to deal with when he's enhanced. So we do just that, and then we slowly pick off the Warg himself, a little bit at a time. There weren't even really many close calls in this one either. It was just a pretty simple fight. Although, still, very, very long. We pick off the Warg, shooting his tail, like a little idiot he is. And of course he burrows at 1 health. But, as I said, all we need is a little bit of patience, and everything on Rezium is possible. Now the next dungeon we encounter is quite interesting. The only objective is to get to the end and free the slaves, which we do just that. I'm pretty sure there was something else I was supposed to do here, but I forgot, so I just left. But on to the final boss of Rezium, the Assassin. This guy was really annoying. He's honestly probably the most difficult boss on the planet. He's very fast, very hard to see, and all of his attacks one-shot. Now, he has a whole lot of attacks. He's got a drop kick and a bunch of melee combos that he's going to try and charge at you with. Honestly, the most annoying part about this entire section was more along the lines of his body colliding with mine was causing my character to act weird. But as long as we're careful and avoid his brutal melee combos and use cover of the giant rocks all around the arena to dodge his seeking knives, because whenever he throws them, they actually chase you, this fight's not too bad. I was sleep deprived whenever I was trying to complete this one, so it took me way longer than it should have, but we do manage to take him out in the end. I still think he's one of the most challenging bosses, but other than that, we move on to the weird mindscape area where I guess we're technically protecting the Guardian, and then we move on to the final boss of the game, Harsgard. Now Harsgard is actually one of the fights that I think is most fun. I did try using the fusion rifle to finish him off, because I think the fusion rifle is just a fun weapon to use. Unfortunately, it's not very good if you don't have anything to scale it with. The base damage just isn't high enough, and I wound up using all of my ammo so many times without even doing very much damage, so I did have to switch back to the sniper rifle, unfortunately. And I don't know if it was my depth perception or what, but for some reason I just kept dying to dumb attacks just because I wasn't paying attention. And it was just kind of awkward that this fight took so long. Because honestly, Harsgard's not that hard of a fight, but I do eventually just become a little bit more cautious. And with Harsgard having more of a trap-based playstyle than an actual lethal-based playstyle, as long as I don't just randomly get hit by random stuff that I should have seen coming. The fight's not too bad, especially with a sniper rifle. The sniper rifle is just really, really good on pretty much every boss in the game. So we shoot true, make sure we don't get stuck in any of his traps, and make sure that I'm looking straight, and we take him down. And with this, we have completely completed Remnant from the Ashes with basically nothing. I still feel bad about having to use a mod that one time, but it was only that one time, and it was necessary to complete the run. Everything else was done with only gun. And with that, we have answered the question that it's kind of possible to beat Remnant with no armor, no melee, no consumables, and no trinkets. I hope you guys enjoyed the video, and I'll see you all in the next one. I hope you're all excited for Remnant 2. I'll be getting my hands on that on tomorrow, and I'll be having a blast with it. Thank you all so much for watching, and I'll see you all in the next one. Adios, guys.